Hey guys, tonight we're going to time travel back to a place where the pillows are made of straw, the floor leaks when it rains, and breakfast might be a handful of cold mush if you're lucky. That's right, you're waking up as a medieval peasant. It's the year 1347-ish, give or take a famine or a war, and you probably won't survive this. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to the sound of chickens squabbling outside and the gentle snore of your cousin, who's been sleeping 3 inches from your head for the past 12 years. The roof above you is thatched and dotted with spider webs. The air is smoky from last night's hearth fire, and the straw-stuffed mattress beneath you is doing its best impression of a bag of sticks. The smell? A potent mix of damp wood, sheep, and something faintly foot-shaped. Hygiene isn't quite in vogue yet, and with everyone in the family, including the goat, sharing the same living space, it's a scent you've grown accustomed to, like a loyal old dog or a loyal old sock. You sit up carefully, trying not to knock over the clay pot of rainwater next to your bedding. This is your drinking water, tooth-rinsing water, and on daring days, possibly your foot soak. There's no sink, no tap, just what you've collected in your pot, hopefully not shared by the chickens who like to wander in. Your house is, generously speaking, a mud hut. More formally, it's a wattle and daub structure. Wooden frames, woven with sticks, and plastered with a hearty mix of mud, straw, and animal dung. Not exactly the architectural triumph of the century, but it keeps the worst of the wind out and most of the goats in. You stretch and hear 3 satisfying cracks in your spine. You're 24. That's middle-aged. You survived the last winter, which means your odds of making it through this one are a smidge better, but still not great. Life expectancy for peasants hovers around 30, though scholars debate whether that's skewed by infant mortality. Historians still argue whether a peasant reaching 50 was a freak of nature or just someone who avoided doing anything too exciting. Outside, the village is stirring. A rooster crows, a cart rumbles by, and someone is already yelling about turnips. You step into your breeches, tug on your linen shirt, which hasn't been washed since last Lent, and shove your feet into leather shoes that are more whole than soul. Laces. You wish. They're tied up with a bit of twine you found hanging from a fence post last summer. The floor of your home is just dirt, sometimes sprinkled with rushes or straw, depending on whether you feel fancy that week. These days you sweep it with a bundle of dried twigs, and only when company's coming, which it rarely is unless your neighbor's pig breaks loose again. Your mother, who lives with you, of course, is already fussing over the hearth. She's blowing on the embers from last night, trying to revive enough flame to boil a pot of thin porridge. You nod a silent good morning. Speaking wastes energy, and you'll need every drop of that for hauling water, turning soil, and dodging your lord's tax collector. There's a bucket in the corner catching rain from a leak in the roof. It's new, the leak, not the bucket. You've patched that part of the roof 3 times with moss and hope. Neither has held up well. The wind whistles through the thatch in the winter, and if it rains hard enough, your house sort of cries with you. As you step outside, your feet squish into mud. It rained last night, and possibly inside as well. The ground around your hut is churned by livestock, neighbors, and the never-ending passage of chores. You see the fields in the distance, the same ones you plowed yesterday and will plow again today. But for now, the sky is pink, the dew is sharp, and you've got about 20 minutes before your back starts aching again. You greet the pig on the way out. Her name is Matilda, and she technically belongs to your cousin, but spends most of her day sleeping next to your fire and snorting like an old man in a tavern. You like her. She's consistent, unlike the weather or the Lord's steward. Breakfast is ready, if you can call it that. A ladle of barley mash, cooked thin with water and maybe a bit of yesterday's cabbage if you're lucky. No sugar, no milk, no TikTok aesthetic. Just steam, salt, and survival. You eat standing up. There are only 2 stools in the house, and your mother has claimed one for eternity. You nod again, finish your portion, and rinse the wooden bowl in your water pot, splashing just enough to make it sort of not crusty. Your chores begin before the sun is high. The ox needs checking, the fence needs fixing, and your brother left the spade out in the rain again. But this is your rhythm, a life of wake, work, rest, repeat. Somehow, you've come to find comfort in it. Even the aching fingers and sore shoulders have their place. They mean you lived another day. A dog barks in the distance, your neighbor's most likely. It barks at everything. Clouds, shadows, mildly offensive squirrels. You wave at old Henry, who's trudging towards the fields. He waves back with a grin that shows 3 teeth and a lot of gum. You pull your hood up as the wind starts to pick up. It's going to be another long day, but for now, you're upright, fed, and only mildly damp. Which, by medieval standards, makes this morning a roaring success. You step outside into the half-light, greeted by the unmistakable chill of damp wool and wet socks. Except you're not wearing socks. No one is. Wool's expensive, and socks are what the nobility argue about when they're not inventing new taxes. You wrap strips of cloth around your feet and hope for the best, or go barefoot and let the mud become part of your spiritual journey. Your village, if you can call a dozen thatched roofs, and 1 sullen pig a village, is already awake. Someone is arguing loudly with a goose. A child is crying because they've just realized it's their turn to clean the latrine pit. And your aunt is muttering darkly about your cousin's dreams again. Something about a red crow and 3 onions. You don't ask. Privacy. That's a future luxury. There are no bedrooms, no doors. Just a curtain if you're lucky, and even that's shared. You sleep beside siblings, cousins, maybe the neighbor's dog, depending on how welcoming your hearth is. Everyone hears everything. Snoring, whispering, the creak of straw when someone rolls over. There are no secrets. Only things everyone politely pretends not to comment on during breakfast. And speaking of awkward moments, changing clothes, you do it in stages. Maybe a clean shirt once a month, usually on a saint's day. Underwear? Not really a thing yet. Historians still argue whether the average medieval peasant wore anything under their tunics at all. Linen was precious, and the idea of changing it daily would have sounded like something a bishop made up to feel fancy. You duck behind the hut to relieve yourself. The latrine is a simple pit, covered loosely with sticks, and strategically positioned downwind. Barely. Flies dance in the air like they're at a festival. You make a mental note to toss in some more ash later, as it helps with the smell, sort of. Back inside, your sister is braiding her hair, and complaining about a blister she got from churning butter yesterday. She's 13 and already betrothed. Her future husband owns half a chicken and once said hello without spitting. A catch by local standards. You give her a sympathetic grunt and grab your sack of tools. There's no real off time. If you're not working the fields, you're repairing roofs, digging ditches, helping birth calves, or fixing the wheelbarrow again because someone keeps crashing it into the compost pile. Your tools are few and precious: a dull blade, a short-handled hoe, and a wooden mallet you carved yourself out of frustration and birch. You tie them together with the same rope that once held your trousers up before it was promoted to a more dignified position. A chicken wanders into your path and glares at you. It's your cousin's favorite and has a mean streak. You step around it cautiously, recalling the time it pecked your toe so hard it bled for 2 days. That bird has secrets, possibly a vendetta. The path to the fields is worn into the earth, a winding trail between huts, dung piles, and a stubborn bush that somehow outlived 3 winters and a pig-related landslide. You pass Agnes again, village gossip in chief, drawing water from the well and muttering to herself. You offer a respectful nod. She knows everything before it happens. Even dreams come to her early. Someone's singing, a lilting melody about St. Bridget and a missing cow. It floats over the roofs and mingles with the smoke curling out of chimneys. You hum along. It's oddly catchy. You reach the communal fields just as the sun begins to peek over the horizon. Your fellow laborers are already there, hunched and hacking at the stubborn soil with the slow grace of people who know this isn't the worst part of their day. Not by a long shot. You get to work without speaking. Words are expensive in the morning. Your breath fogs in the air, and your fingers go numb faster than your thoughts can warm up. The soil is cold, clumpy, and vaguely resentful of your efforts. Someone sneezes nearby. A sharp, wet blast. You freeze for a second. Not because of plague paranoia, at least, not entirely, but because you're standing directly downwind. You shift 2 paces to the left and pretend it's about the sunlight. Your job today is turn the earth and look useful. The local reeve is wandering around with a stick, and if he thinks you're slacking, he'll report you. Or worse, make you help his cousin clean fish again. As you dig, you notice a shiny beetle crawling over a rock. You pause to watch it. It's strangely elegant, like a knight in miniature armor. Then it flies directly into your face. You curse internally and move on. Break time comes when someone decides it should. You sit on a lump of damp ground and eat a lump of damp bread. The bread is yesterday's, or maybe last week's. It has a texture somewhere between brick and regret. But it's yours, and you chew slowly, savoring each gritty bite as though it were honeyed cake. Beside you, old Bertram tells a story about a time he saw a fox steal a pie from the steward's kitchen. You've heard it before, twice this week. But you laugh anyway. It's polite and mildly amusing the 3rd time around. Work resumes. The sun rises higher. Your tunic is sweaty at the back and itchy in the armpits. You long for a breeze, but get a gust of manure instead. Still, the rhythm is oddly comforting. Dig, lift, turn, step. Like a dance no one wants to perform, but everyone knows by heart. You hear a distant bell ringing from the manor. It's noon, or close enough. You won't see the manor today unless the Lord sends someone to collect dues, complain about sheep, or demand your sister's sewing help again.
But the bell reminds you that you exist beneath someone's roof, even if you never step inside it. A buzz of conversation stirs among the workers. Someone claims the miller's wife saw a comet last night. Someone else says it was just a drunk lantern bearer. Theories multiply. Someone invokes doom. Someone else laughs nervously. Agnes from the well probably already knows the comet's middle name. You wipe your brow with a sleeve stained by 6 breakfasts and 2 unfortunate geese. The sun is starting to roast the back of your neck. You wish for a hat, or a cloud, or both. The day isn't over, not by a long shot, but you've made it this far.
With 10 fingers, 2 eyes, and your dignity mostly intact, you stand up, stretch, and glance back towards the village. There, in the distance, your hut leans slightly in the wind, like it's tired too. Back in the village, the morning mist has lifted, revealing a scene that's equal parts quaint and questionable. Chickens strut like nobles. A goat has climbed onto someone's thatched roof again. And your neighbor, Wilfred, is arguing with a wooden bucket that has betrayed him for the last time. Just another Tuesday. Your stomach rumbles. It's not that you're starving yet. You're just never not hungry. The average peasant diet is what a modern nutritionist might call extremely fiber-forward and emotionally unsatisfying. Bread, porridge, more bread, and on really good days, slightly different bread. Your mother's still at the hearth when you return, stirring something with a look of determined futility. It's a grayish-brown mess, bubbling faintly. It could be barley gruel. It could be last week's barley gruel reimagined as a soup. Either way, it smells earthy and comforting if you squint your nose. You grab a wooden bowl and help yourself. It's thin, lukewarm, and slightly gritty. There's a hint of turnip, possibly because it sat next to one. No meat, of course. That's for the gentry, the clergy, or very lucky weddings. For you, protein is an occasional guest star. Some peas, beans if they haven't molded, or the occasional unfortunate mouse if your cat has been generous. And speaking of mice, you spot one dashing behind the hearth. Your mother clucks her tongue but doesn't react. Mice are a given, like cold feet or taxes. You just learn to coexist. You once saw a mouse steal a crumb right off your cousin's toe. The mouse survived, the toe didn't. While you eat, your uncle wanders in with a sack of weeds and the announcement that he found lunch. You don't ask. You know better. He's an enthusiastic forager who once tried to make nettle stew with the wrong kind of nettles. You lost 2 days to hives. Still, wild plants are part of the daily routine. Sorrel, nettles, the right ones, dandelion and chickweed go into soups and stews. Sometimes they go into poultices, teas, or prayers. Your herbwoman neighbor, Editha, swears that boiled dock leaf can cure anything from headaches to heartbreak. Historians still argue whether any of it worked or whether medieval peasants just developed legendary constitutions through sheer stubbornness. After your midday mash, you return to your chores. The compost pile needs turning, which is to say, you need to poke it with a stick and act like you did something so your mother doesn't yell. It smells like it's turning itself just fine. On the edge of the yard sits a single beehive, one of the village's few luxuries. Honey is a rare treat, used mostly for special occasions, or when someone has a sore throat. You remember getting one spoonful once, on a feast day, and thinking it was what angels probably drink. Edith says it also cures burns, coughs, and evil dreams. Probably ghosts too, if you smear it in the right places.
Today, though, there's no honey, just bees, humming like tiny winged landlords.
You steer clear. Mid-afternoon is the time for quiet work. You patch fences, you mend a net. You pick stones from the garden path while trying to ignore the chicken, watching you with clear disdain. Occasionally, you glance up at the sky, checking for ominous clouds or birds flying weirdly low. Both are signs. Of what? You're not sure. But Agnes always makes a face and mutters something when it happens, and Agnes is rarely wrong. You hear singing from 2 huts over, a love song, off-key, very optimistic. It's young Elsie, practicing for her courtship festival, which is really just a way to see who hasn't already been paired off by their parents. Romance exists, sure, but so do arranged marriages, strategic pig exchanges, and promises made during too much cider. You remember your own awkward courting days, holding hands behind the cowshed, a secret flower plucked from a hedge, the scandalous thrill of making eye contact for more than 5 seconds. One time, you even gave someone your second-best wooden spoon. Wild times. As the sun dips lower, it's time to think about dinner. Again, using dinner in the loosest sense. Tonight, it's more gruel, this time with a scrap of onion and something vaguely green. Your aunt says it's a rare herb. Your brother says it's moss. No one argues. Everyone eats. The fire crackles softly in the hearth. It's the only source of light and warmth. And it's a temperamental thing. Too much damp wood and it smokes like a cursed chimney. Too little and it sulks. You coax it with patience and pine cones. Evenings are for mending things, clothes mostly. Your shirt has 4 patches and a 5th waiting for its turn. You try to reattach a button using twine and hope. It holds. Barely. The lighting's bad, your fingers are numb, and you prick yourself twice. You don't curse your mother's watching. Around you, the household quiets. The baby's finally asleep. Your cousin is humming softly as he sharpens a knife with more affection than he's ever shown another human. The dog is snoring. The goat is chewing something that may have once been part of your shoe. You let it be. You lie back against the wall, knees drawn up, eyes half closed. The smoke drifts lazily across the ceiling. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after. You'll wake sore, eat mash, work hard, and maybe sneak a smile from someone across the bread table. It's a small life, but it's yours. The rooster doesn't care that you only got 4 hours of sleep. He never does. He announces the new day like a trumpet with feathers, long before the sun decides to join the conversation. You groan quietly, shifting beneath your scratchy blanket, and remember, it's St. Leonard's feast day, which means nothing changes. You stretch your legs, knocking into someone's ankle. It might be your cousin or your brother. Hard to tell in the pre-dawn gloom. Someone groans back. A polite acknowledgement of shared suffering. But today isn't just any workday. It's a holy day. The medieval calendar is packed with them. Dozens upon dozens of feast days, saint days, fast days, vigil days, market days, and something called ember days, which sound cheerful but mostly involve not eaten meat. Unless you're a monk or rich. Then conveniently, beavers count as fish. Historians still argue whether anyone actually believed that or just pretended really hard. You shuffle outside, bleary-eyed and barefoot. The mud is somehow wetter than yesterday. The air smells of damp wool and incense. Someone's already been to the chapel and lit a bit of resin in honor of St. Leonard, patron of prisoners and women in labor. You're not sure what he has to do with today's chores, but hey, blessings are blessings. The small church at the center of the village stands modestly proud. Stone foundation, wooden upper walls, a bell that sounds like it's made of tin and trauma. But it's sacred ground, the one place where even the most argumentative neighbors will whisper and shuffle respectfully. You step inside. It's quiet and dim, with a few candles flickering near the altar. Father Alwyn is already there, muttering Latin over a chalice. He nods when he sees you, not warmly, but not coldly either. He's one of the few men in the village who can read, and he guards that power like a dragon hoarding holy footnotes. Today's sermon is about obedience. Again. You try to listen. You really do. But the wooden bench is hard. Your stomach is growling. And you keep mentally cataloging how many turnips you have left at home. Probably 4. Maybe 3.5, if your uncle's been snacking again. Outside, the village bustles with holy busyness. Because here's the secret. Even on feast days, work still happens. The church may rule the calendar, but the weeds never stop growing. The pigs still need slopping. And someone has to chase the goose off the roof. You're assigned to help with the roof repairs on the old grange. It's one of the few community projects where you don't have to pay extra rent for your own labor. Hooray for small mercies. You climb the rickety ladder with a bundle of fresh thatch, straw scratching your neck and crumbling down your sleeve. As you work, the bell rings again, and you pause to listen. Not because it's inspiring, because it's loud. A high metallic clanging that echoes across the fields like an off-key church choir. You imagine St. Leonard wincing in heaven. Below you, the children chase each other with sticks, pretending to be knights. One declares he's Sir Poop-a-Lot. You're fairly certain that wasn't a historical figure, but he says it with confidence. So who are you to judge? You secure a patch of thatch, accidentally dislodging a sleepy spider that scampers off in offense. You mutter a half-hearted apology and keep working. The sun rises higher. Your arms ache. Your tunic clings to your back like a needy fabric ghost. At midday, you take your break under a tree near the chapel. Lunch is a crust of bread rubbed with garlic and a sliver of cheese, probably hard enough to qualify as a building material. You gnaw thoughtfully, watching a crow eye you from a nearby branch. Across the green, 2 women argue about whether St. Leonard prefers rosemary or thyme. Neither seems particularly thrilled about the debate, but it's something to do. In a world with no newspapers or phones, holy trivia becomes high-stakes conversation. After lunch, you're sent to help dig a ditch behind the chapel. Something about drainage or demons. Hard to tell. The ground is stubborn and rocky. You sweat, grunt, and try to avoid stepping on Father Alwyn's dog, who has appointed himself spiritual overseer of the project. Someone starts singing a hymn. You join in, mostly for rhythm. The words are half-remembered, but the tune is familiar. It drifts through the air, mixing with the scent of herbs drying on a nearby fence. You pause to drink from your water flask, a leather pouch that tastes vaguely of last year's cider. Still, it's cold and wet, and that's enough. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve and get back to digging. By late afternoon, the ditch is more of a suggestion than a trench. But your back is sore, your hands are blistered, and that feels like an accomplishment. The sun begins to dip, casting long shadows across the chapel walls. You head home, past the bakehouse where someone's burned the bread again. Smoke curls lazily from the chimney. and a cluster of children poke the loaves with sticks, declaring them troll stones. You nod in approval. At your hut, the evening meal is already simmering. Onion soup with a hint of something unidentifiable. Maybe sorrel. Maybe the moss again. No one complains. Everyone is too hungry to question the details. You eat quietly, listening to the crackle of the fire and the distant hoot of an owl. Someone starts a story about a saint who could talk to fish. Someone else adds that the fish answered in Latin. The debate escalates until your mother declares it's bedtime and ends the discussion with a broom. You lie down beside your siblings, wrap your blanket around your shoulders, and close your eyes. The wind rustles the thatch above you. The hearth embers glow softly in the dark. Somewhere, a rooster thinks about crowing. And you? You drift into sleep, thinking about turnips, saints, and whether Saint Leonard would have liked garlic bread. You wake before dawn again, not because you're eager, but because your foot has gone numb from someone sleeping on it. You wiggle your toes and try not to scream as the pins and needles march through your leg like a tiny, sad army. The room is cold, the fire is out, and there's a distinct smell of wet wool, cabbage, and someone's terrible dreams. Your mother is already up, muttering over the embers. She's trying to light the hearth again using a bit of dry moss and a prayer to Saint Bridget. The smoke rises reluctantly, as if it too would rather stay in bed. Today is plowing day. Again, it's always plowing day. You eat your morning mash quickly, thinner than usual, because the barley ran low last week. Your brother adds a bit of dried apple skin for flavor. It tastes like disappointment. Outside, the fields stretch wide and gray beneath a brooding sky. The soil is heavy from rain and has the consistency of bread dough left too long by the hearth. You grip the wooden plow handles, trying to ignore the creak in your back and the even louder creak from the ox. His name is Hob. He hates everyone equally. You and Hob are not fast, nor are you efficient. But you are, in a strange way, dependable. Together, you spend the next hours dragging the plow through earth that hasn't forgiven last winter. You mutter to yourself, to Hob, and occasionally to the worms who seem to be having a better day than you. The plow blade catches on a rock, jolting your shoulder. You swear under your breath and dig it out with a stick. It's not the first rock. It won't be the last. You suspect the ground grows them when no one's looking. You pass Bertram and his son doing the same work 2 fields over. You nod. He nods. That's the extent of the conversation. Talking wastes breath. And breath is valuable, especially when your lungs are full of damp mist and bitter resolve. Your hands are blistered within the hour, and your boots, such as they are, have soaked through. Mud squelches between your toes. You don't remember what dry feet feel like. Possibly a myth, like dragons, or soft bread. By mid-morning, your stomach is rumbling again. You reach into your tunic for the bit of rye crust you saved. It's stale, hard, and slightly fuzzy. You eat around the fuzzy part and tell yourself it builds character. Historians still argue whether moldy bread led to spiritual visions or just really creative hallucinations. You pause to stretch your back. Hob looks at you with his usual mix of judgment and gas. You pat his side anyway. Misery loves company. The reeve rides by on a skinny horse, scanning the workers like he's auditioning replacements for his boots. He doesn't say anything, but the message is clear. Keep moving, keep sweating, and don't think about taxes. Not that you could forget. The Lord always gets his share of your grain, your eggs, your poultry, your firewood, basically anything not nailed down. And even then, he might take the nails. You get a brief break around midday. You sit on a stone, drink from your flask, and try not to think about how many more furrows you need to dig. Your cousin joins you, chewing on a bit of salted turnip and complaining about his fingers. You both agree that peasant fingers weren't meant to be shaped like knotted rope. He mentions hearing about a traveling friar who told people that plowing was holy work, that each furrow was like carving a line in heaven. You nod slowly. Then I must be a saint, you say. And he laughs so hard he nearly chokes on his turnip. Breaks over. You're back behind the plow. Hob snorts and lurches forward like he too has accepted his fate. The soil resists. It always does. But there's something oddly meditative about it, the creak of wood, the crunch of blade in dirt, the suck of mud as your boots come free over and over. You enter a kind of rhythm. You stop feeling your arms. You stop feeling your legs. You stop feeling most things, really. Except your nose, which is running. Probably because the wind picked up and your face is now officially a weathered map of rural suffering. In the distance, you hear the chapel bell again, or possibly someone banging on a pan. Either way, it means the day is sliding toward its close. You push harder, willing your last few rows to finish themselves. They don't. By late afternoon, the light is golden and low, and you finally reach the end of the field. You wipe your brow with a sleeve that smells like goat and victory. Hob lets out a long, dismissive sigh. You suspect it's directed at you. You unhook the plow and lead him back toward the village. Your boots are heavy with mud. Your shoulders ache like they've held up a cathedral. Your hands look like they've tried to wrestle firewood into submission and lost. On the way back, you pass the children chasing a wheel with a stick. It's a beloved pastime and only occasionally results in bruises and mild existential crises. One child screams, "I'm the wheel lord." You nod solemnly, a promising career. At home, the fire is going again, and your mother is ladling something thick and brown into bowls. It's stew tonight. Mostly lentils with a whisper of pork, possibly from the bone someone traded at market. It smells divine. You eat quietly, staring into the flames. The room is dim, crowded, and warm. You're tired in a way that seeps into your bones. But it's a good tired, honest tired. You earned every ache. After dinner, you stretch out on the floor near the fire. The thatch above you rustles in the wind. Someone hums a lullaby. Someone else snores like a bear in distress. You close your eyes, grateful for the end of another day. Tomorrow, more plowing, of course. But for now, you rest. You dream of warm bread, soft beds, and not having to pay taxes on chickens. But the dream ends, as dreams often do in the Middle Ages, when someone steps directly on your hand. You jolt awake, groaning, only to see your little cousin stumbling towards the fire, sleepwalking and clutching what may or may not be a turnip. You roll over, rubbing your bruised fingers, and try to go back to sleep. But the rooster begins his operatic performance. He's relentless, that one. Somewhere in your bones, the ache of yesterday's plowing reminds you that rest is a concept mostly reserved for saints and rich people. You sit up, and before you can even tie your tunic properly, your uncle pokes his head into the hut. The reeve is coming. That gets you moving. Fast. Because while the Lord owns the land, The reeve enforces everything on it. He's the tax collector, the manager, the law, the judge, and occasionally the village tattletale. You once saw him fine someone for sneezing too close to the Lord's pig. You gulp down a few spoonfuls of leftover porridge, cold and congealed into something between jelly and wallpaper paste, and dash outside to look busy. That's the trick. Always look busy. You grab a rake and start raking something. The path? A rock? You're not sure. But when the reeve rides up on his donkey, he calls it a horse, you're already wiping pretend sweat from your brow. He surveys the village like a man expecting it to disappoint him, and it usually does. He dismounts, scroll in hand, ink pot hanging from his belt, and begins what the peasants refer to as the O Parade. Every house he passes, he announces what they owe: a bushel of barley, 2 chickens, a sack of oats, 3 days of labor, and if you're really lucky, your dignity. When he reaches your family, your mother greets him with the fake pleasant voice she reserves for people she'd like to throw into the compost heap. "Ah, reeve. Such a morning, yes?" He squints at his scroll. 4 eggs, 1 rooster, and a half-day's work repairing the manor fence. You nod grimly. You only have 3 eggs. The rooster is half feral, and the manor fence was broken by the Lord's own mule. None of that matters. You and your cousin set off to contribute your labor, while your mother tries to coax the rooster into a basket using dried peas and empty threats. The path to the manor is longer than you remembered. It winds past the fields, crosses a narrow stream, and climbs a low hill that gives you an unpleasant view of everything you don't own. The manor itself has imposing stone walls, an actual roof that doesn't leak, and windows with glass in them. Glass. You stare for a moment. It's like seeing a unicorn, but less magical and more heavily taxed. You're greeted by the steward, a man who speaks through his nose and has the kind of shoes you've only seen on saints in chapel murals. He directs you toward the fence behind the piggery, hands you a hammer with the air of someone loaning a priceless artifact, and reminds you 3 times not to scuff the ground. The work is straightforward but humiliating. The fence isn't broken so much as a bit wobbly when leaned upon by large livestock having a bad day. You tighten posts, replace a rail, and try not to inhale too deeply near the pig enclosure. Around you, the manor buzzes with the quiet efficiency of people who don't sweat for their bread. A servant walks past carrying a silver tray with 3 apples. 3. You haven't seen an apple in weeks. You exchange a look with your cousin. He mouths the word luxury. You nod. Then you both trip over a pig. By midday, the steward declares your work acceptable and dismisses you with a flick of his wrist. You leave hungry, mud-spattered, and faintly aware that you just gave away 4 hours of your life in exchange for not being fined. Victory? On the way back, you pass the tithe barn. It's where the village stores the gifts to the church: grain, hay, eggs, and occasionally a confused chicken. Today, the priest is there, supervising the stacking of sacks. You wave cautiously. Father Alwyn nods in return and calls out, "Blessings upon your effort." You wonder if blessings can be eaten. You suspect not. Back in the village, things are quieter. Agnes is sitting near the well, stringing dried herbs and watching everything. You suspect she knows exactly how many eggs you actually had this morning. Your sister is mending a tunic with a needle so bent it might be cursed. She grumbles about the taxes, too, how even the hens seem to lay fewer eggs when the reeve is around. You don't blame them. You sit down on a tree stump and exhale slowly. The weight of never owning anything, not your home, your land, your time, is a constant companion. You farm someone else's soil, pay someone else's fees, work to feed others before feeding yourself. It's a loop that never ends, unless you're born noble, or become a monk, or die. Still, there are small rebellions, like saving a pinch of salt for your stew, like whispering a joke about the Reeves haircut, like planting a secret row of beans behind the compost heap and pretending they're for the saints. The sun dips low. Your mother manages to produce a soup thicker than usual, lentils again, but with a generous amount of wild garlic. She says it will ward off bad humors and unwanted visitors. You hope that includes the Reeve. As you eat, someone starts singing a ribald ballad about a miller, his donkey, and an unfortunate misunderstanding at the fair. You all laugh, loudly, maybe too loudly. It feels good. You lie down by the hearth, the fire warm on your toes. Tomorrow you'll owe more, of course. There's always more to owe. But for now, you have soup in your belly, laughter in your memory, and a rooster that miraculously hasn't crowed in the last 2 hours. Sleep finds you before you even realize your eyes have closed. You wake to the sound of your uncle shouting something about the good pot and someone else tripping over a goat. It's not even light out yet. You sit up slowly, rubbing your eyes, and realize 2 things. Your legs ache like you've been jousting a windmill, and your stomach is already growling. You dress in your usual layered combination of not quite clean and definitely not dry. Your tunic still smells faintly of turnips and old rain. The hole in your sleeve has gotten bigger, but now it's shaped like a rabbit, so you consider it fashion. Today's task isn't farming, it's foraging. Because winter is whispering around the edges of the season, and you need more than just hope in your storage baskets. You and your cousin grab your sacks, a short knife and a walking stick, and head for the woods just past the fields. You pass the stream, where someone has left a pair of shoes to soak, whether in washing or ritual punishment is unclear, and begin the journey into the forest's edge. The woods are quiet in that strange, listening way. Every crackle of leaves beneath your feet feels louder than it should. The air is damp, the ground soft, and the trees have begun to shed. You search for mushrooms, berries, nuts, anything edible, and not obviously poisonous. You've learned to avoid the bright red ones, usually. Editha says the ones with gills shaped like a bishop's hat are safe, unless they're under a willow. Then they're cursed. Historians still argue whether this was medical advice or folklore running on fumes. You find some wild garlic, a few blackberries, and a cluster of mushrooms that your cousin insists look edible enough. You add them to the sack and try not to think about last time, when edible enough turned into 3 days of fever dreams and loud stomach noises. Foraging is slow, meditative work. You wander, eyes low, scanning for green shoots and soft stems. You occasionally swat a fly, mutter about thorns, and stop to admire a squirrel who seems much better fed than you. You briefly consider asking him for advice. At the edge of the forest, you find what might be a patch of sorrel. You taste a leaf. Sour, lemony. That's a good sign. Into the bag it goes. While crouched beside a bush, you hear distant hooves. You stiffen. Not every rider is friendly. Bandits sometimes wander this far and worse. Tacksmen with new ideas. But it's only Bertram on his pony, looking for firewood. You wave. He waves. He's chewing on a stick. It might be lunch. As the sun climbs higher, you stop to rest on a fallen log.
Your cousin pulls out a tiny sliver of cheese wrapped in cloth. You break it in half and pretend you're at a royal banquet.
The cheese is hard, sharp, and crumbles immediately. Royal banquets are overrated. You chew slowly, staring up at the trees. It's quiet here, peaceful. You almost forget you live in a world where the church decides if you can eat meat this week, and a sneeze might be considered a bad omen. Almost. Back in the village, your bounty is laid out on the table. Garlic, berries, sorrel, a few questionable mushrooms, and 2 handfuls of hazelnuts. Your mother eyes the mushrooms with suspicion. "We'll dry them," she says. "If the dog eats them and survives, we'll try them." That's not a joke. The dog has survived worse. Last year, he chewed on a wax candle, barked for 6 hours, then fell asleep in the pig pen and dreamed in Latin. You help your sister peel the garlic and string the herbs to dry near the hearth. The room fills with a sharp, earthy scent that makes your nose tingle. Your aunt claims it keeps evil spirits out. You believe her. The Reeve hasn't visited in 2 days. Dinner that night is one of those rare, magical moments. There's actual variety. A little onion, a handful of herbs, wild garlic, and 3 whole beans from the stash you weren't technically supposed to keep. The stew is rich by peasant standards, and everyone leans in, spoons scraping eagerly. As you eat, someone mentions the word famine in a whisper. It's not a joke. It's a reality that looms every year when the weather is bad or the storage runs dry. You've heard the stories of families boiling tree bark, people grinding acorns, and children chewing leather. You know that last winter, one village over, someone tried to make stew from boiled hay. It didn't end well. You remember because Agnes told the story 3 times, and each time the story got more dramatic. Historians still argue whether medieval famines were always caused by crop failure or sometimes made worse by hoarding, poor planning, and lords taking the lion's share. What's not in doubt is how little it took to tip from hunger to horror. Tonight, though, you're lucky. Tonight there is stew, warmth, and even a sprinkle of crushed herbs on top, like some peasant garnish. You savor every bite, thinking how strange it is to call a bowl of weeds and beans rich, but rich it is. After dinner, you help your cousin hang the herb bundles from the beams. They sway gently in the warm hearth air, releasing faint scents of thyme, sage, and memories. Your sister starts a lullaby, and the younger children hum along sleepily. Someone snores in the corner. You lie back on the straw mat, full in a way you didn't expect to be. Not stuffed, not sluggish, just satisfied. You stare up at the rafters, counting herbs and cobwebs. You feel the ache in your legs, the scratch of straw against your skin, and the distant echo of owls calling from the woods. Tomorrow you'll likely have less, or maybe more. You never know. But for tonight, your belly is warm, your fire is steady, and no one has demanded an egg in payment. Sleep comes quietly. No rooster this time. The village is unusually quiet this morning. Not peaceful, just expectant. You sit up slowly, noticing the way the air feels thick, like the world is holding its breath. Even the chickens are subdued. Your mother doesn't speak when she hands you a bowl of thin broth. Your cousin is already at the well. No one is humming. You step outside into the early mist. It hangs low, curling around the thatched roofs and drifting across the muddy path like a silent warning. You feel it in your chest. Something is off. Then you hear it in low whispers near the chapel. You follow the sound to find a gathering of villagers standing in a loose huddle. their faces drawn, their voices hushed. The miller's daughter is sick. You don't need to ask what kind of sick. The answer is always the same now. Buboes, fever, blackened skin, the plague. You freeze where you stand. A creeping chill works up your spine, not from the cold, but from recognition. You've heard the stories. You've seen the signs before, and now it's back. There is no cure. No priest can stop it. No herb can soothe it. People vanish in days, sometimes hours. Whole households gone, buried in haste. No funerals, just pits. Your neighbor Agnes crosses herself 3 times. She's seen more seasons than anyone, and even she looks scared. That says everything. Father Alwyn appears, face pale, robes slightly crooked. He holds a sprig of rosemary, muttering prayers under his breath. Rosemary for remembrance, and maybe for warding off death. Historians still argue whether these rituals helped or simply gave people something to cling to. You back away from the crowd. Instinct. Your mother always said the plague moves faster than fear. You believe her. By midday, the rumors have spread farther than the infection itself. 3 houses are already shut tight, their doors marked with ash. No one goes near. The path in front of them is eerily clean. Your mother sends you to gather herbs quickly. She calls for sage, thyme, lavender, anything that smells strong and might mask the scent of sickness. Editha, the herb woman, hands you a bundle of dried marigold and whispers, "Hang this above the hearth, and burn vinegar in the corners." You nod, not because you understand, but because doing something is better than doing nothing. That afternoon, the air is heavy with smoke and silence. People burn rosemary in iron pans. Children are kept indoors. No one touches anyone. You find yourself flinching when someone sneezes. You hold your breath when you pass the chapel. And yet, life must go on. You still fetch water. You still stir the soup. You still mend your tunic. Because to stop is to let fear win. So you move with a routine, carefully, eyes darting to every cough, every flushed cheek. At supper, no one speaks above a whisper. Your family eats quickly, bowls close to mouths, and hands are washed in vinegar water before and after. Even the dog looks concerned. You sleep poorly. Dreams of darkened skin, closed doors, and empty fields haunt you. You wake to the sound of distant weeping. The next morning, you learn that the weaver's son didn't wake up. They buried him at dawn, wrapped in linen, with no priest. The earth was still soft. That's a small mercy. More houses are closing. More herbs hang in doorways. Agnes starts wearing a clove-stuffed rag over her nose and insists on burning rue in the evenings. She says it worked last time. No one argues. Some villagers whisper that cats carry the sickness. Others blame rats. A few blame the stars. You don't know who to blame, and maybe it doesn't matter. The result is the same. You notice who disappears first. The oldest, the frailest. The ones already thin from last winter. Then the strong ones, the surprise cough, the sudden fever. The boy who helped you carry firewood yesterday. You learn to measure grief by silence. The fewer words a family says, the more they've lost. And yet, through it all, you persist. You avoid crowds. You eat garlic until your breath can ward off demons. You scrub your hands with lye until they crack. You keep your distance even from those you love. One evening, you walk past the chapel and see Father Alwyn sitting alone, head in his hands. He looks up as you pass and says only, "Keep praying." His voice cracks. He doesn't look like a man of faith today. He looks like a man trying not to shatter. The next morning, the bell doesn't ring. He's gone. They bury him without ceremony. Just a prayer, a hurried grave, and a rosemary sprig tossed in after. The village has been quiet for a long time. That night, you light a candle and whisper names to yourself. Those gone, those still here. You don't cry. Not because you don't feel it, but because crying makes it real. Somehow, the next day dawns. The sun rises, birds sing. The fields still need tending. You stir the stew, you feed the chickens, you patch your cousin's sleeve. Because surviving means moving, even when it hurts. You burn more rosemary. You carry time in your pocket. You sleep with garlic under your pillow. And you keep going, because peasants always do. The wind feels sharper today, not colder, just meaner. It whips around corners and slides through the smallest cracks in your home, like it's looking for something or someone. You pull your tunic tighter and avoid the road that passes the weaver's hut. It's still boarded up. No one's gone in or out for days. You carry your chores in silence, fetching water, feeding the animals, checking on the onion patch that refuses to grow straight. You keep your scarf tight across your nose, even though the herbs inside it have long since withered. Just the smell of lavender, now ghostly, fading. And then someone coughs, not far away, near the well. Not a delicate little sneeze, but one of those body-rattling, soul-worrying coughs. You freeze mid-step, water sloshing in your pail. Everyone near the well glances sideways. No one says anything. But the silence afterward, that says plenty. The cougher is Thomas, the cooper's son. Maybe it's just a cold. Maybe it's not. No one asks. He quietly picks up his bucket and walks home. The path clears around him like water parting for a stone. That afternoon, you're sent to help your aunt with laundry, an act that in plague season feels like both necessity and punishment. Boiling clothes, scrubbing blankets, hanging them in the wind, and hoping it carries something awful away. The soap is made from lye and animal fat, and it stings your hands. You bite your lip and keep working. Your aunt hums to herself an old funeral hymn, of all things. You don't ask why. In the middle of wringing out a tunic, she pauses and mutters, "We'll need more lime." You nod, though you don't know if it's for scrubbing floors or burying bodies. That night, word spreads that the carpenter's wife has taken to her bed, and her youngest has disappeared. Some say he died. Others say he ran into the forest. Either way, no one's seen him since yesterday. You help hang more rosemary bundles. The chapel remains shuttered, Father Alwyn's absence still fresh in the minds of the faithful. Agnes leads prayers now, quiet ones spoken in corners and thresholds. No hymns, just whispered hope. But hope is a fragile thing. A few families pack their things and leave in the night. You hear their boots crunching, cartwheels creaking, whispers carried by the wind. They don't say goodbye. You don't blame them. The next morning, 2 dogs fight over something near the edge of the village. You look once, then you don't look again. The path to the fields grows quieter. Fewer footsteps, fewer voices. Even the birds seem to avoid flying directly overhead. You find yourself walking wider circles around other people, holding your breath longer, speaking less. The world has shrunk to your hut, your family, your fire, and yet there are odd moments of normal. Your sister laughs at something your cousin says. Your mother bakes a flatbread with the last of the rye and manages to make it taste almost like something celebratory. The piglet squeals when it slips on a puddle, and everyone chuckles for a moment longer than they should. You cling to those moments like embers in a dying fire. Later that day, you're asked to help bury the cooper's son. There is no ceremony, just four men, a wooden cart, and a patch of soft earth far from the well. You wear a scarf soaked in vinegar, not because it works, but because it makes you feel braver. You say nothing. You dig, you lower, you cover. When it's done, someone mumbles a line from a psalm, but even that sounds hollow. On the way back, you pass the manor steward on horseback. He's wearing a heavy cloak and a scarf of his own. He doesn't stop. He doesn't speak. He doesn't even look at the grave. The nobility have retreated behind their stone walls. Peasants are on their own now. No alms, no mercy, no priests. Just the wind, the smoke, and what you can carry with your two hands. That night, as you huddle near the hearth, your mother starts to cry. Quietly. So quietly. Her shoulders shake. She holds a half-mended tunic in her lap, needle stuck in place, forgotten. You don't say anything. You just sit beside her and place your hand on hers. Because sometimes surviving isn't about being strong. It's about being there, even when you're afraid. Especially when you're afraid. Eventually, she finishes the stitching, wipes her eyes, hands you the tunic. "You'll need it," she says. You nod. Outside, the sky turns an eerie shade of violet, streaked with clouds that look like torn wool. The wind rattles the shutters. Somewhere in the distance, a dog howls. Inside, your fire is small but steady. You stack more kindling, wrap yourself in your patched blanket, and try to sleep. You dream of green fields, of harvests that never rot, of laughter without masks, and sunlight that doesn't feel like a threat. And in the morning, you wake up, which is, for now, enough. The wind has changed again. It smells different now, like smoke and wet wood, mixed with something harder to name. Loss, maybe, or memory. You step outside into a pale morning and immediately notice the absence. Fewer voices, fewer footprints in the mud, fewer sounds from the huts across the green. The village feels thinned out. You carry your water bucket with practiced balance. It's heavier than usual, not because there's more water in it, but because your arms are tired in a deeper way now. Not sore, just weary. Like your bones have been listening to too much bad news. At the well, Agnes sits on her stool. She's always there now. A bundle of rosemary at her feet, a wooden ladle in her lap. She doesn't speak unless spoken to, but when you nod, she gives you the faintest smile, the kind that knows too much. Someone's singing again, quietly, but clearly. A child's voice. You follow the sound to find young Elsie kneeling by the chapel door, murmuring the same phrase over and over. Bring him back, bring him back, bring him back. She doesn't seem to notice when you pass. You deliver the water home and sit for a moment, just to feel the stillness. And then your cousin arrives with news. They need help digging. It doesn't need more explanation. You nod and grab your shovel. The burial field has grown. It started as a patch near the edge of the woods, far enough from the well, close enough for carts. Now it's a line of mounds, each barely marked, sometimes with a sprig of herbs, sometimes with nothing but a stone and silence. Today, 4 more. You join the others. No one speaks. You dig, shoulders moving in rhythm, feet slipping in the soft earth. The smell of clay and cold roots fills your nose. Your hands are blistered again before you finish the first grave. The bodies come wrapped in cloth. No name spoken. You don't ask. You don't want to know. Maybe that's worse. Maybe not. By midday, the digging is done. You rinse your hands in the stream, watch the muddy water swirl away, and wonder if grief is something you can scrub off. On your way back, you pass the manor again. The gates are shut tight. No one has come out in days. The steward's horse is gone. Even the guards look nervous. One wears a cloth soaked in rose water. The other carries a stick and refuses to come within 6 feet of the fence. The rich are hiding. That's nothing new. They say the Lord has fled to his estate up north, where the air is cleaner and the servants fewer. The steward claims he's still administering from afar. You haven't seen him in a week. Back in the village, you find your mother cooking something that smells like hope and garlic. She smiles when she sees you, even though her eyes look tired. She ladles stew into wooden bowls, thick, rich, and surprisingly hearty. You look at her. Bertram's cow died, she says simply. They gave us the bones. You eat slowly, savoring the flavor, knowing it's a rare gift. Everyone eats in silence. Even the dog doesn't beg. After the meal, you gather the tools and head to the fields. Life still goes on. The weeds didn't get the message about the plague. The air is warmer today. The sun breaks through the clouds in patches. The earth is softer, easier to work with. You find that comforting, like the ground is finally agreeing to cooperate just a little. You work until your arms ache, until your back stiffens. You don't stop, because movement is a kind of prayer now, a ritual, a promise to the earth and the sky that you're still here. On the way home, you stop to check the traps. One rabbit, small, scrappy, but enough. You carry it home with quiet triumph. Your cousin beams when you show it. He hasn't smiled in days. The rabbit is clean, skinned, and added to tomorrow's stew. Your mother saves the fur. For slippers, she says. It sounds absurd, but you nod. That evening, you sit with your family near the fire. You mend a tunic. Your sister combs her hair, and your uncle tells the same joke he always tells about the goose who thought it was a priest. You laugh again. You have to. And then, without warning, someone knocks on the door. That's rare. Most visitors now are birds or bad news. You open it slowly. It's Editha, the herb woman. She's pale, wrapped in layers, and holding a bundle of dried flowers and ash. She says nothing at first, just looks at your mother. Then she holds out the bundle. Burn this, she says, tonight by the hearth. Your mother accepts it without a word. You invite Editha in, but she shakes her head. Too many places to go, she whispers. Then she looks at you. Keep the window shut tonight. And just like that, she's gone. You hang the herbs above the fire, a mix of sage, rue, rosemary, and something bitter you don't recognize. When it burns, it smells like secrets. That night, you don't sleep well. The wind rattles the shutters. The fire crackles low. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls once, twice, then nothing. No one speaks, not even in dreams. And yet, morning comes, and you are still here, still breathing, still hoping, still clinging to the rhythm of survival. It's not much, but it's something. The morning after the bell, everything feels heavier. The sky is a low gray lid over the village. Not stormy, just pressing. The kind of sky that makes your thoughts move slower. Your arms ache more, and your hope feel like it's working through mud. You step outside and immediately notice it. The absence of birdsong. Not a chirp, not a flutter. Even the crows have stopped their usual heckling. That's never a good sign. Your cousin is already outside, chopping wood with the focus of someone who'd rather hear anything but silence. The log pile is getting lower, but you say nothing. You just grab an axe and help. The thud of blade on bark becomes your conversation. Breakfast is quieter than usual. No one reaches for seconds. Not because there's none left, but because they know what's coming. Today, you're helping Editha. Not in the fields, not in the kitchens. In her work, the village's only healer, midwife, apothecary, and some say quiet witch, Editha, has been overwhelmed. She used to be the one people came to for salves and teas. Now she's the one they call when the coughing starts. You find her outside her hut, arranging bundles of dried herbs in a large basket. Her face is pale, her eyes sunken. She doesn't greet you with a smile, just a nod. "You can carry that," she says, pointing to a sack of small glass vials and rags. You follow her to a house at the village edge. Inside, it's too warm. Not cozy warm, fever warm. The air is thick with the smell of vinegar, sweat, and thyme. The boy on the bed isn't coughing anymore. He's past that stage. He just breathes shallowly, eyes fluttering, limbs twitching beneath a damp blanket. Editha sits beside him, whispers something you don't catch, and gently presses a cool cloth to his forehead. You stand there, holding the basket, unsure what to do with your hands, your face, your heart. She hands you a sprig of lavender and a cloth soaked in sour wine. "Hang that above the door," she murmurs. You do as you're told. The boy's mother is in the corner, rocking silently. You recognize her. She used to bake oatcakes and hum when she stirred. Today, she stares at the wall like it has answers. After an hour, Editha stands and nods at you. "That's all we can do." You both walk back slowly. She stops by the well to wash her hands in vinegar. You follow her example, the smell burning your nostrils. "Sometimes," she says quietly, "the herbs work, sometimes they don't." You nod. What else is there to say? She doesn't return to her hut. Instead, she continues toward the next home. There's always a next home. You return to yours, suddenly aware of how cold your hands are. Your sister is boiling laundry with lye. You help her stir the pot, watching steam curl into the air like restless spirits. She doesn't ask where you've been, she knows. Lunch is turnip soup. Again. You chew slowly, staring into the bowl, wondering how many other hands have stirred the same meal on days like this, with hearts just as heavy. Afterward, you help fix the fence near the field. A simple job, familiar and repetitive. You work alongside your cousin in silence, exchanging only glances. You both flinch when a crow finally returns and lands nearby. It caws once, then flies off again. An omen. A joke? A mercy? On the way back, you pass the market square. It's changed. No stalls, no bartering. No children chasing dogs or women scolding men for overpaying in carrots. Just empty space, windblown and quiet. In the center stands a cart, covered with a cloth. You don't ask. You don't look. You go home. Dinner is lighter than usual, not because there's less food, but because there's less appetite. Afterwards, you sit by the fire, darning socks that have more holes than fabric. Your mother hums something from before the plague, a lullaby maybe, or a prayer disguised as a tune. Then she says something that makes your hands freeze. "I dreamed of your grandfather last night." You glance up. She stares into the fire. "He was standing in the field, laughing. Said we'd plant barley again this year. Said the rain would come soft." You nod slowly. Dreams mean things now. Maybe they always did. That night, as you lie on your straw mat, wrapped in layers, staring at the flicker of the firelight, you wonder
what it would feel like to live in a time without this fear, without the counting of coughs, without the silence between knocks. You drift off imagining what you've never known: a spring with laughter, a meal with cheese, a life without plague. And in your sleep, you smile, just a little.
Rain arrives before dawn, soft at first, like fingers tapping on the thatch, then steady, then insistent. It seeps through the edges of the roof, forming quiet drips in the corners of the hut. One lands in the cooking pot with a faint plonk. You roll over sighing. Your cousin mumbles something about drowned saints and pulls a blanket over his head. You're up before the fire is. The ashes are cold, the embers dead. Your mother sighs when she sees it, already gathering dried moss and kindling. We'll be smoked like fish by midday, she mutters. Blessed fish, if we're lucky. You step outside and immediately regret it. The village is one giant puddle. Mud sucks at your boots with every step. Chickens huddle beneath carts. Someone's cloak hangs on the well's post, sodden and abandoned like a washed-up dream. Rain makes everything harder. The bread doesn't rise right. The fire refuses to catch. The animals grow restless, and every chore takes twice as long with half the patience. But worse than all that, it brings memories. Because everyone remembers the famine years. It always started with a season like this. Too much rain, too little sun. The grain didn't dry and the roots didn't grow. Then the stores ran low. Then the sickness came, not plague, but hunger. The kind that thins a village down to bones and whispers. Historians still argue whether the Great Famine was worsened by mismanagement, hoarding by the rich, or sheer bad luck. But in your village, there's no debate. It was raining, relentless, sneaking, ruinous rain. You help your cousin cover the thatch with fresh bundles, tying them tight with rope that's already unraveling. You're both soaked before the second knot. The wind laughs through the trees, flinging leaves at your face like it's trying to start a fight. Your sister tries to dry herbs near the fire, but they steam instead of crisping. We'll have mulled stew before the week's done, she grumbles. And yet, the work continues. You repair the fence again, the third time this week, because water has turned the posts to rot. You patch a hole in the pig pen. You dump buckets of rainwater from inside the house. You wring out your own sleeves and try not to imagine what next month will be like if the clouds don't change their minds. By midday, the rain turns sideways. Everyone takes shelter. You gather near the hearth. The fire is stubborn, but it lives. You roast a few soggy chestnuts and pretend they're feast day treats. Your mother produces a sliver of honeycomb, her last piece, and cuts it into eighths. You chew yours slowly, like it's gold. That afternoon, the ground flooded in places. The path to the field is now a stream. The ditch you dug 2 weeks ago has become a pond. One of the goats has climbed onto the roof again. Dry land with a view. You stare out the doorway, listening to the drumbeat on the thatch, and think about the future. If the grain spoils in storage, if the roots drown in the soil, if the rabbits get sick or the river rises, there's always an if, always a dozen of them. That's the secret shape of peasant life, a string of conditions all slightly out of reach. You remember stories of people eating bark, grinding acorns, boiling leather shoes. You don't want to believe them, but you've seen how fast a pantry can vanish when the road turns to mud and the sky won't stop weeping. In the evening, someone knocks on the door. You're tense because these days, knocking is rarely casual. It's Bertram. He's soaked through, shivering and holding a basket. "Shared what we could," he says, handing over 3 onions and a chunk of dried pork. "We heard your roof gave way." You thank him with both hands. Kindness in times like these is its own kind of rebellion. Later, when the rain slows and the fire burns steadier, you all share the pork in silence. It's salty and a bit chewy, but no one complains. Even the dog chews his bit slowly, eyes half closed like he's dreaming of better kitchens. Your mother smiles, faintly, as she watches the flames. "We've seen worse," she says. You nod, unsure whether it's true, but grateful for the lie anyway. Outside, the rain lightens to a drizzle. The wind softens. Someone begins a song low, slow, half-hummed. It's an old harvest tune, sung out of season but still welcome. You find yourself joining in, not because you feel like singing, but because you need to remind the silence who you are. The night stretches on, long and wet, but somehow warmer. You fall asleep to the sound of dripping water, the crackle of fire, and your sister's soft voice murmuring plans for tomorrow. Plans that assume the sun will return, and that, for now, is enough. Morning comes like a whispered apology. The rain has finally stopped. For the first time in days, the sky opens just enough to let a shaft of light slice through the gray. It lands on the puddles outside your hut like a benediction, turning mud to gold, if only for a moment. You step out carefully, your boots squelching into the softened earth. Everything glistens. The thatch shines, the fences drip, and the trees along the edge of the fields sway under the weight of recent memory. The world smells of wet wood, moss, and cautious relief. The chickens emerge one by one, blinking at the strange brightness. Even the pig seems confused, trotting in a circle like he's waiting for another downpour to ruin his day. But not today. Today, you're headed to market. Not a feast market, not a holy day bazaar, just the regular village market. The kind where trade smells like smoke and hope, and everything you own might be worth half an onion. You bundle a small stack of firewood, a dried fish, and a jar of pickled leeks. Your cousin packs 2 carved spoons and a small sack of hazelnuts. That's what you have. That's what you'll trade. The road is soft but walkable. You pass Agnes near the well, carrying a bundle of rosemary. She gives you a nod and a muttered, "Don't trade for anything with worms this time." You pretend not to hear her. The village square is busy in that slow, mud-splattered way. Stalls lean under patched canvas roofs. Goods are displayed with quiet optimism. Baskets of dried beans, scraps of wool, a few tired apples, one badly stuffed goose that keeps looking at everyone like it knows too much. You find your usual corner and lay your things out on a piece of clean cloth. And then you wait. The first person to approach is old Jonette, whose eyes you leaks with suspicion. "Still crunchy?" she asks. You nod confidently. She trades you a heel of barley bread in return, hard as stone but edible. You count that as a win. Next, a boy offers you 2 candles in exchange for the fish. They're short, misshapen, and slightly bent, but they smell faintly of beeswax, and you haven't had candlelight since Lent. Deal. A man with a limp tries to haggle over the firewood, offering you a half-used lump of soap and a sharp comment about your posture. You decline both. Someone laughs. You look up. It's Editha. She's selling small bundles of dried herbs, flanked by 3 children carrying baskets and wearing matching frowns.'Apprentices,' she says dryly, 'or hostages? I haven't decided yet.' You trade her your spoons for a packet of dried yarrow and 2 cracked cloves of garlic. She throws in a wink and a story about a baker who once healed a swollen toe with honey and profanity. You believe half of it. The air grows louder as more villagers arrive. The blacksmith's wife is bartering for wool. The reeve passes through like a damp shadow, inspecting but never touching. You notice people avoiding him. His cloak is too clean, his hands too smooth. At one end of the square, someone's playing a fiddle, badly. But the sound is so surprising, so defiantly joyful, that people stop to listen anyway. A few children dance in wide, stomping circles. Their parents pretend to scold them, but no one really tries to stop the laughter. You watch it all from your little stall. The girl selling eggs, the old man carving whistles, the boy offering to trade a dead squirrel for a button. No takers. You feel, for the first time in weeks, like the village is breathing again. Not healed, but breathing. You pack up your remaining goods, fewer than you brought, and sling your bag over your shoulder. The sky is still open, still kind. You walk slowly. On the way home, you stop by the chapel. The door is ajar. Inside, someone has lit a candle. One of yours, maybe. The wax drips onto the stone floor like tears that are too tired to fall all at once. You sit for a moment in the quiet, not to pray, not really, just to be still. The candle flickers. Dust drifts in a beam of light. You let your breath slow. Outside, someone calls your name. You step out to find your cousin running toward you, breathless. He grins and holds up a cloth bundle. Apples, he says, triumphant. Spotted, but real? He pulls one out and tosses it to you. It's small, bruised on one side, and smells like late summer. You bite into it without thinking. It's tart, crisp, alive. You walk the rest of the way home side by side, chewing and swapping small stories from the market. The pig did something scandalous. Someone bought the goose. The fiddler was the reeve's cousin, apparently. That explains the key changes. At the hut, your mother's already started the evening meal. She lifts the lid to reveal a thick lentil stew. You drop your herbs in, and she nods approvingly. Later, after dinner, you light one of the new candles and place it in a dish by the hearth. The flame dances gently. The shadows soften. You sit back, full and warm. Your sister hums. Your uncle snores. Your cousin mutters in his sleep about apples and dancing goats. You smile, close your eyes, and let the weight of the day slip from your shoulders. Outside, the wind is still. Inside, you rest. It's laundry day. Again. Not by choice, by smell. Your sister holds up a tunic with 2 fingers and a face like she's just uncovered a crime scene. If this walks off by itself, she mutters, I'm not chasing it. You gather the pile. Tunics stiff with mud. Hose patched and repatched. Under things that haven't seen soap since the last festival. The laundry tub groans under the weight before you even add water. Washing clothes in your village is not a dainty affair. It's not a copper tub in a sunny courtyard with a floral-scented breeze. Number. It's a battered wooden trough near the stream, half filled with ash-soaked water, surrounded by 3 geese, 2 children, and at least 1 neighbor, loudly judging your scrubbing technique. You head there with your cousin, both of you balancing bundles of soiled clothes, chunks of lye soap, and the resigned silence of people about to battle decades of embedded dirt. The stream is frigid. It always is. It does not care for your comfort. You kneel on the cold, wet earth, plunge your hands into the gray water, and immediately regret every life decision that led to this point. Still, you scrub and scrub. And then you scrub some more. The soap foams slightly, smelling of fat and burnt wood. Your fingers go numb within minutes. You develop a rhythm. Slap, rub, twist, rinse. The tunic goes from brown to lighter brown. You count that as progress. Nearby, two women debate which saint protects laundry. One says Saint Anne. The other swears it's Saint Hunna, the holy washerwoman. They agree to disagree. Then Agnes passes by and says, "It's Saint No One. Laundry is a curse." You believe her. By mid-morning, your arms ache, your knees are wet, and your cousin has managed to soak his entire left leg without explanation. You wring out each garment and hang it over the line strung between two leaning trees. The clothes drip steadily, like they're weeping for their sins. Then comes the lice check. Because in your world, clean doesn't just mean soap, it means inspection. Your mother lines you all up like sheep for shearing. She parts your hair with a carved bone comb, squints, and announces her findings with all the gravity of a town crier. 1, 2, nothing alive on this one. Good. Moving on. You sit there, still damp, waiting your turn, while the dog scratches himself next to you, possibly mocking the entire process. Afterwards, you warm your hands by the hearth, grateful for even that small mercy. The clothes hang drying, steaming gently in the sun like ghosts fleeing purgatory. It's easy to mock laundry day, but you know better, because laundry is survival. A clean tunic means one less infection. A louse-free scalp means one less fever. A good scrubbing keeps death at bay for one more day. Historians still debate just how much medieval cleanliness contributed to longevity. But you're not waiting for a university to tell you that warm water and soap saved lives. The rest of the day is spent patching the damage. Your sister sews a gaping rip in your uncle's trousers with the determination of a blacksmith. You mend your tunic with thread that used to be part of a curtain, which used to be part of a dress, which used to belong to someone no one talks about anymore. Nothing goes to waste. Even holes have histories. Later in the afternoon, the reeve makes his rounds again. This time, he's checking for able-bodied villagers to help build a new granary wall. You duck behind a hanging sheet and hold your breath. He doesn't see you. Small victories matter. Your mother trades 2 bundles of dried lavender for a spool of blue thread. Blue. You haven't seen color like that in ages. She uses it to mend the collar of her Sunday smock. And for a moment, just a moment, she looks like someone from a painting. Dinner is humble. Boiled peas, a bit of yesterday's bread, and pickled cabbage that's more enthusiasm than flavor. Still, it fills the belly. And no one gets a splinter from the bowl this time, which is its own kind of success. Afterward, you sit by the fire, combing through the dry laundry and folding it as best you can. The cloth is rough, uneven, scratchy, but clean. It smells faintly of smoke and sage, of effort, of another day won. Your cousin jokes that you should hang the laundry across the chapel's altar and declare it holy. Your mother whacks him gently with a sock. Before bed, you pull on the still warm tunic and exhale. It feels good, crisp at the seams, heavy in a clean way, like a second skin that remembers the scrubbing and thanks you for it. Outside, the stars peek through the cloud breaks. The geese settle down. The wind hushes. Even the dog seems content. You lie down, wrapped in dry wool and faint scents of thyme and sun. Your feet no longer ache. Your hands are pink but healing. sleep comes, and it comes softly. You dream of rivers that wash away more than dirt dreams, perhaps, of a life just a little less grimy. But even in dreams, you scrub, because laundry, like life here, never ends. You wake up warm, and that's unusual. Not because the weather's changed, but because someone didn't let the fire die overnight. You crack one eye open and see your mother dozing beside the hearth, her shawl half burnt from sleeping too close. You sit up slowly, joints popping like old hinges, and stretch toward the gentle heat. Today is the feast day. Not a major one, not like Michaelmas or the Nativit, but a minor saint's feast, which still means a few important things. There will be no field work. The church bell will ring far too many times. And if the gods are merciful, there might be meat. Or at least the illusion of it. You throw on your second best tunic, which is really just your regular tunic with fewer patches on the front than the back. Your cousin is already combing his hair with a carved bone fork and humming an off-key version of a hymn he doesn't quite remember. Your mother lays out the day's rations on the table. Barley cakes, a wedge of cheese so old it could testify in court, and the crown jewel, a smoked goose leg. You stare at it like it might vanish. Goose is rare. Goose means celebration. Goose means someone knew someone, or helped someone, or found a particularly unlucky goose. Your mother says nothing, just sets it down like it's no big deal, though you can see the pride twitching at the corner of her mouth. You save the goose for later. First, Massachusetts. The chapel smells like pine and wet wool. Everyone's in their feast clothes, meaning the least mended, least frayed, least smelly versions of their usual attire. Someone even has a hat, a real one, made of felt. It draws stares. Father Alwyn may be gone, but his replacement, young Father Cedric, does his best. He's nervous. He stumbles over his Latin. He forgets which saint today even belongs to. But no one minds. They're just grateful someone still stands at the altar. He talks about light and mercy and finding joy in the small things. You glance sideways at your sister, who's picking dirt from under her nails with a pin. She's clearly seeking joy somewhere else. After Mass, the village square begins to fill. It's not a market today, but a feast ground. A spit has been erected, not for goose, of course, but for root vegetables brushed with oil and roasted over open flame. There's a pot of lentils so big it could bathe a child, and someone's managed to brew ale from barley scraps and questionable fruit. Children run wild, faces smudged, arms sticky with honey from the one stall that dared to sell sweets. You trade your old belt for a single plum tart, share it with your cousin, and spend the next 10 minutes arguing over who got the larger bite. The music starts after the second bell. It's a one-man band, John the Miller, who can't sing, can't keep time, but somehow manages to bang a drum and squeeze a pipe at once. It's terrible. It's wonderful. Couples dance in crooked circles. Old men stomp in rhythm. The Reeve scowls from the edge, clearly disapproving of the joy. You drift through it all like smoke sampling roasted parsnip here, dodging a flying turnip there, sipping a mouthful of ale that tastes like someone boiled raisins in regret. But it's warm, it's shared, and that's enough. Toward evening, the real feast begins. You gather with your family around the fire, place the goose leg on the table like an offering, and divide it carefully. 7 people, 1 leg. You all pretend not to notice that your mother takes only a nibble. The taste is smoky, salty, rich in a way your body isn't used to. You chew slowly, like it's the last thing you'll ever eat, because it might be for a while. You finish with warm barley cakes, dipped in the stew you saved from last night. No one speaks much. It's a reverent silence, the kind that says, let's just enjoy this while it lasts. Later, you sit outside on a log, watching the fire crackle down to embers. Your sister plays a game with stones. Your uncle tries to tune his lute, fails, then plays anyway. Someone begins to sing a harvest song. Others join in. The lyrics are half remembered, the harmony non-existent. But it rings out under the stars like a spell. Even the reeve hums, quietly, just once. You close your eyes and let the warmth seep in, not just from the fire, but from everything. The laughter, the food, the not quite dancing, the memory of goose on your tongue. This is why feast days matter. Not because they're extravagant, but because they interrupt the hunger. They remind you of what's possible, even if it's fleeting. You fall asleep that night with a full belly, a warm blanket, and the last notes of a badly sung song echoing in your ears. And for the first time in weeks, you dream not of survival, but of dancing. The morning after a feast day is always a little slow, not lazy, just softer. Like the village collectively agrees to speak in hushed voices and let the chores start themselves. You wake to the sound of gentle sweeping, not shouting. A rare kindness. Your mother's already folding yesterday's feast cloths, humming a tune that's carried over from last night's songs. The hearth embers are warm. The soup pot still smells faintly of goose. And your cousin is snoring, face down on a pile of turnip sacks like he's just survived a war. You step outside and breathe in the cool air. The sky is clear. The mud has dried just enough not to no longer swallow your boots. And the fields' glorious, ordinary, blessedly unchanged stretch before you like a promise. Today's task: manure. Yes, the glamour of peasant life continues. You and your cousin load up the cart with buckets, shovels, and the resigned knowledge that the rest of your day will smell deeply, profoundly unpleasant. The ox Hob looks at you with the same expression he always has: general disappointment with a hint of smugness. Collecting manure is part science, part strategy, and part sheer endurance. Some of it comes from your animals, some from neighbors, some, if you're very unlucky, are from the roadside after the Lord's horses have passed through. You gather it all. Shovel, dump, spread. Shovel, dump, spread. The fields need feeding before planting, and there's no better fertilizer than something that once wandered around complaining. It's smelly, it's sticky, it's essential. You find yourself elbow deep in the stuff, and somewhere between the third and fourth trip to the edge of the barley plot, you and your cousin start making up a song about Saint Muck, the patron saint of unfortunate tasks. It's terrible. You both sing it anyway. By midday, you're coated in a layer of peasant cologne sweat, dirt, and the fragrance of economic necessity. You rinse off at the stream, splashing cold water on your face and arms until you're clean enough not to offend the village dog. Lunch is a flatbread with wild garlic and a slice of pickled radish. Sharp, tangy, and surprisingly satisfying. You eat it in the shade of a tree, watching the breeze ripple through the long grass like fingers through hair. After lunch, your sister asks for help gathering firewood. It's not the kind of glamorous medieval task that ends in poetry, but it's one of your favorites. Walking into the forest with empty arms and returning with purpose. The woods feel different after rain, soft underfoot, fragrant, alive. You search for fallen branches, dry twigs, anything that will burn well and smoke less. Your sister hums as she works, and you join in, weaving your off-key voice through hers like a half-remembered lullaby. At one point, she stops and points to a patch of mushrooms. Editha says those'll cure a sore throat. You look closer. And maybe give you visions of St. Ursula riding a cabbage cart. She laughs and plucks them anyway. We'll test them on the dog. By mid-afternoon, your arms are full of kindling, and your sister has a pouch of herbs, mushrooms, and 3 oddly shaped stones she insists are lucky. You believe her. Mostly. Back home, the firewood gets stacked, the herbs get sorted, and the mushrooms go in a pot for later, which likely means when we run out of edible things. Your mother's preparing dye this evening, black walnut for wool. You help crush the shells, your fingers stained brown by the end. The dye pot simmers over the fire, thick and fragrant. She dips the wool in slowly, like baptizing a child. And you watch the pale yarn darken to the color of storm clouds. Deep color, she says. Lasts longer. You nod, though you don't know if she's talking about dye or something else. That night's meal is simple but warm. Lentil stew thickened with old bread, seasoned with garlic and salt from a pouch that's almost empty. The last of the honey is drizzled on the crusts. Your cousin offers a crumb to the dog, who takes it as if it were gold. After dinner, your uncle takes out his flute, badly carved, slightly cracked but beloved. He plays a tune that wobbles in pitch, but somehow lands on the right emotions: contentment, weariness, a strange kind of hope. Your sister braids rosemary into twine. Your mother mends socks with thread that's nearly gone. Your cousin tries to balance a spoon on his nose and declares himself lord of the table. No one argues. The fire burns low. The wind outside is gentle tonight. Not a howl, not a rattle. Just enough to remind you it's still out there, but not angry anymore. You lie down with your tunic still damp from the stream, your hands sore from shoveling, your heart a little fuller than yesterday. And as you drift into sleep, you think not of the work ahead, or the wood to chop, or the mud to clear. You think of the dye pot, the song in the woods, and the mushroom your sister swore was magical. You think, maybe it was, the rooster oversleeps. For once, it's not the sound of his boastful crowing that wakes you, but your uncle knocking over a clay pot while trying to find his boots in the dark. It shatters with the mournful finality of every medieval household object. Irreplaceable, mostly sentimental, slightly moldy. Your mother sighs. That was the good pot. You sweep up the shards carefully while chewing a piece of dry rye crust. Breakfast today is modest, even by your standards. The pickled turnips are gone. The cheese is a memory. And the last of the broth clings to the sides of the pot, like it's ashamed to leave. But it's enough to get moving. Today, you're going to the woods not for firewood, but for something stranger. A pilgrimage of sorts. A relic has arrived in a nearby village, carried by a monk from across the hills, and rumor has it that touching it cures illness, brings fertility, or ensures your chickens stop laying square eggs. No one agrees exactly what it does, but everyone agrees it's holy. Your mother insists you go. For the blessing, she says, and maybe a bit of trade. You pack light, a pouch of herbs, a spool of thread, and a handful of nuts. Your sister adds a woven bracelet she made last winter, in case someone's bartering with pride instead of sense. The walk takes most of the morning. The road is narrow, flanked by nettles, and occasionally interrupted by puddles deep enough to hide a mule. You pass a shepherd chewing a reed, who nods without blinking, as if he's lived his whole life beside this road and never seen anyone quite worth stopping for. As you walk, the forest shifts. Birdsong trickles in from above, cautious and sweet. The air smells of damp bark, cold moss, and the unmistakable sharpness of decay. But it's not unpleasant. It's ancient. The kind of scent that reminds you how long the earth has been watching. You reach the village near midday. It's larger than yours. 3 rows of thatched roofs, a proper gate, and even a stone chapel with a crooked bell tower. There's a crowd gathered in the square. At the center, under a canopy of stretched cloth, stands the monk. He's younger than expected, pale, barefoot, eyes the color of tired snow. He holds a small wooden box wrapped in red cloth. No one's seen the relic directly. It's too holy for that, or too fragile, or maybe just too unimpressive. You wait in line with your pouch in hand. A woman ahead of you presses her forehead to the box and whispers something about her daughter's cough. A man behind you carries a chicken. When it's your turn, the monk doesn't speak. He simply nods. You reach out, fingers trembling, and touch the cloth. Warmth. Not magical, not divine, just human warmth. But in this cold, that's a miracle enough. You don't feel cured or changed, but you feel something stir. A quiet calm, like the kind that comes after a good stew, or the moment right before sleep claims you completely. You nod back to the monk and leave your bracelet behind, a trade of sorts. At the edge of the village, you sit and eat a piece of bread while watching the procession continue. People from all walks, old, young, hobbling, weeping, hopeful. Not just for the relic, but for the idea of it, that something somewhere might help. You trade your herbs for a small jar of goose fat and a strip of dried apple. Not much, but enough to make your mother smile. On the walk back, you stop by the stream to wash your hands. The water is cold, biting, and clean. Your reflection shivers back at you, eyes tired, hair windblown, cheeks pink from the cold, but alive, and somehow steadier. When you return to the village, it's nearly dusk. Your mother hugs you tightly, then clucks over your wet sleeves. She spreads the goose fat on the last of the barley bread. The apple goes into a pot to simmer with dried herbs. A feast by winter standards. You sit by the fire and recount what you saw. The relic, the monk, the candle smoke curling in spirals like it carried wishes. Your sister listens with wide eyes, already imagining a better world where everything you touch makes something grow. Later, you slip the strip of red cloth you tied around your wrist into your pocket. A keepsake, maybe not sacred, but meaningful. Sleep finds you faster than usual. No coughing, no wind, just the sound of the fire breathing gently and the memory of warmth beneath your fingertips. And in the dream that follows, the relic opens not to reveal a bone or a tooth, but a small wild flower still blooming. You wake smiling. By now, you know the rhythm of the seasons not by the calendar, but by your bones. The ache in your knees means the frost will come early. The way your fingers crack when stirring dough means winter won't go quietly. Even the pigs start walking slower, as if their hooves can feel the cold brewing in the soil. And then there's the manor court. You hear the bell before you see the gathering. A deep clang, deliberate, the kind of sound that makes everyone straighten their backs, whether guilty or not. Your mother sighs, and ties her scarf tighter. Don't speak unless spoken to, she reminds you, and don't volunteer for anything, ever. The manor court isn't just about law. It's theater, gossip, intimidation, and accidental comedy. You show up whether you want to or not, because absence looks like guilt, and guilt often leads to fines. Or worse, more chores. The villagers gather in the field outside the manor wall. It's muddy, of course. It's always muddy. A long wooden bench holds the steward and two lesser lords, their cloaks looking like they've never touched a turnip in their lives. The reeve stands beside them, smirking as if he's already decided half the village is guilty of something. You find your place in the crowd. Your cousin is chewing on a twig to calm his nerves. Your sister is trying to blend into the shawls of a group of women, whispering about the miller's latest scandal. Spoiler. It involves a goat, a bucket, and deeply poor judgment. The first case is a pig trespassing in the priest's garden. The pig, of course, isn't present. The accused Bertram is. He explains that the pig escaped due to a broken fence, which broke because of last week's storm. He patched it as soon as he noticed. The steward declares him guilty of negligence and demands either a bushel of oats or 3 days digging the manor ditch. Bertram sighs and chooses the ditch. Then comes a case involving 2 neighbors and 3 stolen eggs. The women yell loudly. Everyone listens. Even the chickens seem curious. One woman accuses the other of hiding eggs under her cloak and pretending her hen was miraculously productive. The other claims divine blessing. The steward, visibly uncomfortable, fines them both a penny and tells them to share a coop for a month to learn Christian patience. Next comes your uncle. Apparently, someone saw him disturbing the peace by shouting threats at the sky during last Thursday's thunderstorm. He argues he was merely warning the clouds not to ruin the washing. The reeve suggests, this sounds vaguely like witchcraft. Your uncle insists it was practical sky management. He's fined 2 turnips. But the real show begins with the cow adultery. Yes, you heard that right. It seems the blacksmith's prized cow was seen canoodling. Yes, canoodling with the tanner's bull in the field near the chapel. The blacksmith claims it was unauthorized. The tanner says the animals are of age and followed their hearts. The steward takes this seriously for a full minute before realizing he's being mocked. Everyone laughs. Even the reeve cracks a smile. The case is dismissed with a wave, and a note that any future liaisons should occur beyond church view. But not everything is funny. Toward the end of the session, the reeve reads off the names of families behind on grain tithes. Your stomach tightens. You wait. But your name isn't called. Not yet. Others aren't so lucky. They shuffle forward, heads bowed, offering excuses, extra labor, or what little they have left. The court ends as the sun begins to dip. The steward closes his book with a satisfied thump and declares, "May order be preserved." Then he turns and vanishes behind the manor gate like he's solved world hunger. The villagers disperse slowly. You linger for a moment. There's something strange about watching everyone return to their lives after publicly discussing stolen eggs, pig crimes, and romantic livestock. Your sister joins you, holding a crust of barley cake someone gave her. "Do you think the cows are really in love?" she asks. You shrug. Wouldn't be the first creature to fall for someone with horns. At home, your mother has already heard the highlights. She's laughing so hard she nearly drops the stew spoon. "Your uncle threatened the sky?" she wheezes. "We should charge it rent?" Dinner is cabbage and bean stew, served in mismatched bowls. and eaten with slightly burned bread. No one complains, not even the dog, who's given the bowl with the cracked rim and seems deeply honored. That night, your uncle recounts his trial with dramatic flair, adding details that definitely didn't happen, like thunder answering back in Latin, or the clouds forming into the face of St. Peter. Everyone laughs. Even your mother, who keeps shaking her head and saying, "You'll get us all burned as heretics." Afterward, you sit by the fire, stitching a hole in your tunic by candlelight. The air smells of smoke, soup, and storytelling. And somewhere out there, a cow dreams of her beloved bull. And you? You drift off to sleep, wondering what ridiculous trial will come next. You secretly hope it's yours. The frost arrives, without knocking. You wake with a cold nose and a breath you can see. The air inside the hut is sharp, dry, and utterly still. Even the chickens are quiet this morning, huddled together like feathered conspirators in the corner. Outside, the fields glisten under a thin crust of white. The grass crunches, the mud has turned stiff, the sky is the pale blue of someone who hasn't had enough sleep. Frost means two things. The fasting season has officially begun, and secret rebellion is not far behind. It's a holy day again. Not a feast this time, but a fast. The church calendar is peppered with these days when food is reduced, meat forbidden, and your thoughts are meant to be more spiritual than practical. No butter, no bacon, no indulgence of the flesh. You nod respectfully at the chapel as you pass. Then you walk straight into the woods with your cousin and a slingshot, hoping to break the rules. You're not alone. Half the village fasts in public and feasts in private. It's tradition. It's a necessity. And it's quietly hilarious. Your cousin spots a rabbit trail. You follow it through the brush until snap. He loses a stone and down goes dinner. He grins. "St. Hubert, forgive us," he whispers. You gut and clean the rabbit near the stream, wrapping it in leaves to carry home. On the way back, you pass Agnes, who's collecting mushrooms. She doesn't say anything, just raises an eyebrow and continues humming a hymn. By midday, the village is putting on its pious face. Inside the chapel, Father Cedric delivers a sermon about humility. You sit on the rough wooden bench, hands folded, trying not to think about the rabbit hidden under the hearthstone back home. He talks about temptation, sin, and the glory of suffering. Your stomach growls loudly enough to be heard 2 rows away. You hear a giggle behind you. You try to focus on the Latin. You pick out a few words. Caritas, penitentia, vigilantia. You translate them in your head. Charity, penance, alertness. Or as your uncle says, no cheese, no fun, and no second helpings. After service, the villagers gather in small, quiet groups. Bread is passed around, dry, hard, solemn. Someone shares a thin stew made with peas, water, and the absence of joy. You chew it politely, nodding, murmuring things like cleansing and grateful. But the moment the sun dips and the priest is safely in his quarters, everything changes. Behind your hut, your mother lights the fire and lowers the kettle. She glances towards the chapel once, then pulls out the rabbit from its hiding place. Your sister plucks herbs. Your cousin sharpens the knife. The air fills with the unmistakable smell of defiance and rosemary. You eat under candlelight, windows shuttered, voices low. The rabbit is stewed with garlic, onions, and just enough wine to remind you of feast days. You tear the meat from the bone with your fingers, licking the juices from your palms like a criminal. It's delicious. Better than any holiday loaf or saint-approved cabbage water. Even the dog gets a bone. Afterwards, you wash up quickly and sit around the hearth, faces glowing, bellies full. You don't speak of what was eaten. You speak of stories. Your uncle tells one about a priest who fasted so fiercely he forgot how to walk and had to be carried by donkeys for the rest of his life. Your mother tells another about a woman who hid bacon in her shoe and was canonized when no one found out. Historians still argue whether these kinds of tales were meant as warnings or celebrations. You choose to laugh either way. Later, your sister pulls out a flute made of reed and plays a soft, drifting tune. You close your eyes and let the music float over you like warmth. The room smells of cooked meat and pine sap. Your head rests against the wall. Your fingers twitch with sleep. Tomorrow, you'll go back to barley mash and boiled weeds. Tomorrow, the priest will talk about abstinence again. Tomorrow, you'll behave. But tonight, you've stolen a bite from the feast the church forgot, and it tastes like freedom. The cold has settled in like an uninvited guest who won't stop sighing. Even before your eyes open, you feel it. The stiffness in your knees, the weight of extra blankets pressed against your chest, the unmistakable tingle of frozen toes. You curl deeper into the straw, hoping to squeeze one more minute of warmth before the day begins. But warmth, like luxury, is fleeting here. The fire is low, the air is thin. You rise anyway. This morning is different, not because the chores are gone, they never are, but because today is the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, the longest night. And in your village, it's quietly known as a day for remembering. Your mother calls it midwinter's breath. Not a holiday exactly, just a pause, a turning point. The coldest hour before the first inch of light. You begin with the animals. The barn is half frozen, and the breath from the ox steams in thick clouds. You whisper a thank you to Hob, the ox half in jest, half in ritual. He grunts back, unimpressed but dignified. The chickens squawk in protest as you scatter feed. Even they know today is not just another cold sunrise. They cluck lower, slower. The rooster crows, but it sounds more like a sigh than a song. At breakfast, your family eats in near silence. A pot of oat porridge stirred thick, laced with the last of the dried berries saved from summer. No one speaks, but everyone understands. This is a meal meant to carry memory. Afterward, your mother begins preparing the candles. There are not many, just 3, each one made from beeswax hoarded since midsummer. She wraps the bases in sprigs of dried rosemary and sets them in a row along the hearth. These, she says quietly, are for the ones who didn't see this winter. No one replies. Your sister wipes her nose with her sleeve. Your cousin looks away, pretending to poke the fire. Names are whispered into the silence, some aloud, some only mouthed. A neighbor, a baby, a priest. A friend whose absence still echoes like an unclosed door. The first candle is lit. You sit in the light and remember, not with grief, but with stillness. The flicker dances over the patched tunics, the cracked bowls, the weary hands folded in laps. This, too, is survival. The second candle is for the land. You take it outside, shielding the flame with your palm. The wind tries to snuff it out, but you guard it like it matters, because it does. You place it on a flat rock near the garden's edge. The soil is asleep beneath the frost, but the flame makes a quiet promise. Spring will come, not soon, but surely. Back inside, your uncle stirs the stew. He's added wild garlic, saved beans, and a sliver of smoked root. It's thicker than usual, the kind of meal made not just to feed the belly, but to soften the soul. The third candle is lit at sunset. This one burns for the unknown, those who may not make it through the next frost, the next fever, the next hungry night. For yourselves, for hope. You eat together, bowls warm in your palms, no seconds, no talk of tomorrow, just chewing, breathing, sitting. Afterward, your sister brings out a bundle of twine and dried herbs. She braids them together while humming the tune your mother used to sing when you were too young to know the words. It winds through the room like a blanket. You add to the braids a button, a shard of blue glass, a feather, tiny things, forgotten things, talismans for a world that gives no guarantees. When the fire burns low, your mother stands and says, "We've made it halfway." No fanfare, no celebration, just the truth. You lie down that night beside the hearth, the 3 candles flickering near the dying coals. Outside, the wind picks up again, but the cold feels softer, as if the earth itself is turning over beneath its blanket. You watch the last candle burn low, melting into the rosemary. The smell fills the room, sharp, earthy, almost sweet. A reminder that something lived here, that something still does. And as your eyes close, the final thought slips eye, not of fear, not of frosts, not even of hunger, but of light, small, faint, but unextinguished. The longest night has passed, and though the road ahead is still winding, still cold, still uncertain, something shifts. The coals in the hearth hold steady. The wind rattles, but it doesn't win. You've seen another sunrise. You've carried water, lit candles, and told stories. You've remembered. And that, in a life like yours, is a kind of triumph. Outside, the stars begin to fade behind a slow wash of gray. The fields frozen, cracked, and waiting lie quiet beneath a sky that feels just a little lighter than yesterday. Even the frost on the window seems softer now, like lace instead of ice. Your sister mumbles in her sleep. The dog sighs. The world breathes in, long and low. And you stay there, wrapped in the scratchy wool and the memory of warm stew, listening to the quiet crackle of cooling ash, the drip of thawing eaves, the whisper of breath from those you love. No one speaks. No one moves. Because right now, there is nothing to fix, nothing to fear, nothing to do but be. Tomorrow will bring more mud, more work, more aching joints and stubborn oxen, and taxes you don't remember agreeing to. But for now, just rest. Let your eyes fall gently closed. Let the last curl of smoke from the hearth rise like a prayer. Let the past stay tucked in beside you and the future wait patiently outside the door. You're safe. You're home. And you made it through the night.